What percentage of your income have you allocated to your 401k? Now, when it comes to 401ks, they are one of the best investment vehicles because they have very high contribution limits, even looking at 23,000 in 2024. And if you're over the age of 50, you can actually put over $30,000 into your 401k. And these limits are going to increase in future years because of inflation, meaning it is very possible to save one, two, three, even $5 million in your 401k plan by the time you retire. Now, the most difficult part of this is actually putting money in there. For a majority of people I know, they make small contributions, might be 2%, 3%, 5%, but nobody is putting what they need to or what is recommended at the 15% into the 401k, really decreasing the odds of becoming a 401k millionaire or having enough money in there to retire comfortably, which is what we're going to be talking about in this video. 3 ways in making some adjustments in that 401k that you can retire comfortably when it comes to the time. Starting with our first one, claim as much as you can in 2024 and claiming as much of the match as possible. If your company offers a 401k match, it is free money. If they're giving you 3%, 5%, 7%, anything that you put in there, you personally have to make a contribution in there by December 31st. That is the deadline for 2024 contributions. You have to make sure that you're getting the match and that you're getting the most of the match you can. Regardless of anything, you are not going to see bigger, higher, more investable gains than getting a company match. Again, it is 100% guaranteed return on a company match. My company personally, they put in 7%. We get a 7% match on what we put in there, which is huge when you start looking at contributions. And every single 2 weeks, we're getting a 7% match. If you're not getting that match and really matching that in its entirety, you are losing money in your entirety at 100% return. Talk to your company's HR department, look at your 401k plan, see how much you've contributed this year, how close you are to the cap, and can you get to the cap? That is something to challenge. Now, there is kind of a catch-22 with this that I want to talk about. When you think of 401k plans and when you think of this match, for simply math purposes, we're going to talk 5%. So if your company is giving you a 5% match on your 401k plan, that is part of the compensation package that you're offered through the employer that you work for. If you're not taking advantage of that 5%, you are losing 5%. Now, in addition to that, is not putting the 5% in there, you're not getting that compounding interest, you're not starting seeing the growth. And of course, when you start looking at a multitude of years, the earlier that you're making these contributions, the more you can actually stack in there when it comes to. Now, of course, caveat with this is employers sometimes have a vesting period, which could be 2 years, 3 years, depending on your employer, before you could get that money, where if you're not fully invested when you leave the employer, you'll be forfeiting some or all of those 401k matching contributions, which can make a really big difference. And of course, if you're unhappy with the job, if you have a better performing job, if you have a higher paying job, you have to weigh the pros and cons. Is it worth leaving at the point you're at to actually get those 401k contributions, or do you want to stay? And also, when it comes to what you can invest in, this is the other big thing that you have to do your research. You have to know exactly what your 401k plan has, what kind of ETFs, what kind of target date funds, what does it offer in your plan specifically. That might make a difference again for that 5%. If you're matching only that 5% and then looking at Roth IRAs, looking at traditional brokerage accounts, looking at a lot of other means, if they do not have the investment vehicles that you need to really grow that wealth, that also comes with fees. The second one we're looking at, looking for opportunities to reverse or reduce your fees. Speaking of fees, this will eat into your profits. This is the reason when you start looking at expense ratios, and of course, when you start thinking of either fees that they have, investment fees, there could be fund fees, there could be advisor fees, there could be a lot of fees that are going to eat into your portfolio overall. And through the course of your life, it could eat up as much as 30% of your entire investment portfolio that you're just getting taken out in fees, which is kind of crazy. When you start looking at the funds, and again, thinking of them bundled as a package like we have with our ETFs, you have to know what funds are available and what the cost and what the expense ratio of that fund is going to be. You could be paying a monthly fee. You could be paying a bookkeeping fee. We have seen annual fees for it. We have seen a percentage base. So even if your portfolio is down, let's say 20%, they are still getting that 1% fee from managing that fund. You have to know exactly where it is and what these funds look like. And of course, review the prospectus. This is the time again where you have to put really the accountability and knowing what you're investing in your portfolio. Talk to your 401k plan provider, even, and I do stress, talk to someone outside of the company, talk to someone outside of that 401k provider. Look at the investment strategy. If it aligns, great. If they're greatly different, you might want to get, again, a second advice, talking to someone, looking at what is available, what makes sense. So when I started personally looking at my target date funds, the target date funds had a much lower return than we've seen with the traditional ETF funds. They also had a much higher fee than we've seen with those traditional ETFs. So I switched many years ago, got out of those target date funds, which were through Vanguard. I was like in a Vanguard, I think 2045 or a 2050 plan. The fund provided a much lower return at a much higher cost, which of course could make a really big difference when you start extending it even over the last decade. I have seen amazing returns investing into something like the S&P 500 ETF versus having it into those target date funds. The final one we look at is planning your strategy for 2025. Now, as it sits right now, we do have everything that is going on. Open enrollment for a majority of companies are here, meaning what is the strategy for 2025? When you think about your 401k, your HSA, when you look at IRAs, when you look at your MESP programs, when you look at everything big picture, what is the plan? What is the contributions going to look like? What is your retirement savings plan? What is it going to look like? Are you putting money into your 401k first to get the match? Are you going above and beyond that 401k? Again, if they're matching 5% and we're looking to get into 15%, and also taking a really hard look of the pros and cons of traditional 401ks and Roth 401ks. Now, of course, most people have access to those traditional 401ks, which give you that upfront tax break, making it valuable if you're in a very high tax bracket. But when you start looking at a multitude of years, essentially the way that I see it is a traditional plan. You are kicking your tax liability down the road. You are also allowing that 401k plan to grow into a gigantic, massive nest egg that now you're going to have to pay taxes on when you get down the road. You could even do like I do and actually split it up between traditional and Roth, putting roughly 30% to traditional, meaning that nest egg is going to be a lot smaller. But with that traditional portion, I know that is going to be the supplement that I'm going to use to supplement my Social Security income. The Roth money is what I plan to leave in the entirety with generational wealth that is going to be completely tax-free. Now, of course, when you start looking at the variation, Roth will beat out the traditional. Even during retirement, if you are in a lower tax bracket, you've already paid the taxes, you know exactly what you owe. You're not required to take RMDs. That's another really big thing where with the traditional plan, you're going to be required to take required minimum distribution, or RMDs once you hit a certain age. And I believe right now it is 73, meaning you're going to have to take that money regardless if you want to take it. When you take the money out with RMDs, you're required to pay taxes. So again, it could eat up a big chunk of your nest egg. And also depending how big that nest egg is, you could be into a higher tax bracket if you're required. If you have a couple $1 million nest egg, it could make a big difference when you have to take money out and what you have to do with really taking it out and paying taxes on a much higher amount, again, can put you into a higher tax bracket. So again, when you think of the 401k plan, Roth 401k is what I'm going into. Want to make sure you're not going over your annual contribution limits, which is that $23,000. And for most employers, if you go over that limit, your employer will refund that difference back to you. You have to make sure going into 2025, getting ready for next year, you have your retirement savings strategy really in place. Your HSA contributions, you know what they're going to look like. If you're in a high deductible healthcare plan, what you're putting into IRAs, what you're putting into brokerage accounts, where is the plan for future you that is going to thank you again in the future when it comes to these savings? Making and really looking at your plan on a regular basis, making sure you're in the best investment strategy and the best investment in general when it comes to the 401k plan is going to make a big difference for you in the long run. So all right, guys, so that is going to do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, and I'll catch you in the next video.